how do you get people who have and still have to work a job where they're seated predominantly and move them gracefully out of that kind of posture? So the sedentary society, and then kind of how you help specifically alleviate or ameliorate some of that.
Yeah. I want to go back for a second and just point out that all the metaphors that you used, down the rabbit hole, right? To balance these ideas, to break out of them, to get them moving, right? The way that you think about how you think is all movement. But so we live in a world. Well, how do we break people out? What are people suffering, and how do we break them out of it? Well, a really easy place to start is your arms never go over your head and your shoulders never open up all the way. Right? Spending all your time here means that this is not being explored. And so very frequently you'll find that people can't reach overhead anymore. And that becomes a source of pain and dysfunction. And their shoulder, actually, the morphology, the bones in the shoulder become impinged because they're never getting exposed to this hanging, right? Which is a fundamental thing. Like, human beings evolved from something like 90 million years of arboreal animals. And as we became large-bodied animals, we developed this ability to suspend ourselves across multiple branches by using our hands over our head. It's something that only apes really can do. And that's the orientation of a vertical torso, or the origination of the vertical torso, and the flat chest. A monkey has a chest that is keel-shaped, like a dog's, and cannot extend their shoulder fully and arm fully overhead. Monkeys can't swing monkey bars the way that we can. It's only apes. So we lose that. Our eyes, right? Your eyes did not evolve for staring at something that's only 12 inches away all the time. And so how many people have glasses today? They have glasses because the muscles in their eyes are habitually holding their eye in a specific shape. And some of the muscles are becoming overly strong and overly kind of focused on a specific level of tension, and some are atrophying because they're not being used. The bones are becoming fragile and weak because they're not being exposed to loading. The hip and ankle and knee are losing mobility because we're not getting down all the way to the ground. One of the things that research shows is that one of the best predictors of longevity, as we look at older people, is how well they can get up and down off the ground. But we're removing that demand from people's daily lives by constantly having seated apparatuses around them. So we are weak. I was talking to my friend Scott Olson about this. Also, there's a sense of tonus in the body that you see leaving people as they age that you don't necessarily see in tribal populations. So you see people have these bodies that look kind of lumpy and fallen and crushed in on, because the demand for the central tonic muscles to maintain their function isn't there. And also, lots of people's guts are inflamed, which turns the tonic stabilizers off right away. So there's multiple causalities there. But fundamentally, like, we're a deeply physically unhealthy culture. We are fragile. Our skin, our bones, our immune systems, our guts, our joints, they're all not what they could be, not by a very long shot. So what do? Well, we start people with the fundamental movement nutrients that their bodies are ready to start adjusting to again. And that depends on who they are. But virtually everyone can start with walking. And more time walking is better, right? The average hunter-forager walks 10 plus miles per day, right? Most Americans who are trying to be active might shoot for 2 total miles a day, and that'd be good. That'd be a lot better than most people are getting. And then walk on uneven surfaces, as you mentioned, Katie Bowman said, or walk barefoot, walk through nature. All those things are going to be really big. And a walk in nature is generally motivating and enjoyable for most people. Whereas if you start them with CrossFit and someone's totally unfit, they'll find it miserable. They'll find it absolutely horrible and painful to start with. They may enjoy the pain. They may come back for the pain, or they may find the social aspect worth it. But that initial experience of it is going to be harsh. And a lot of people are going to burn out because of it. So I always tell people, start with walking. Mm-hmm. Start with walking, and then start with changing your seated behavior, right? So if you can sit on the ground, sit on the ground. You know, when I do these podcasts, a lot of times I'm sitting in a chair because the framing is better. But you know, in the morning when I make my coffee, I grind the coffee by hand, and again a squat on the ground. Watching TV, you can sit on the ground to watch TV. You can lay on your belly, right? Like laying on your belly and extending your back is like a huge developmental thing for children, right? Mm-hmm. In infancy. And a lot of adults have lost the ability to do so without their backs hurting. Well, you lost something pretty big. You should probably do something to recover that. So stuff that gets us on the ground, and not just as a practice like yoga or Feldenkrais, but as a habit in your life is really valuable. And again, Katie Bowman, we've mentioned multiple times, is really kind of the best person to go for this stuff. She just really nails it in and describes it beautifully. And I think does a great job motivating people to adopt what I call movement lifestyle habits. So walk a lot, get down on the ground a lot, and then find some way to hang from things. Those are the fundamental sort of lifestyle habits that you should have. And then you might want to do something like a joint rotation to just sort of start indexing and mapping your body. Basic yoga practice, basic qigong practice, all these things are they're just good for general health and understanding of your body. There's lots of ways you can do that, but they're a great place to start. And then when it comes to getting into the intense exercise, the exercises that will really transform your body, right? Visually transform your body and give you skills and give you that sense of like, I'm strong in the world. What I always tell people is find the thing that you inherently enjoy doing, right? If you see parkour and it gets you excited, start with parkour, right? If you just love being in water and nature, like go swim. If you love skiing, dancing is really, really a profound entry point for a lot of people. So many people in the fitness industry love to hate on Zumba, but I think Zumba is brilliant because it motivates people to move, right? Yeah. And it's achieving what 99% of fitness is not achieving, which is connecting movement to a very positive, effective state. And so, yeah, it's not going to get you everything that like a well-designed strength and conditioning program is. But maybe if you're highly motivated to get better, you'll then add the strength training, add the mobility training, So I always say start with passion when it comes to adding like movement practice into your life. And so, I
agree.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the passion part, man. And you mentioned the dancing. I remember it brings me back to it. I would love to turn this into a question to see if you or people that you've trained have had this experience. But this was the very beginning. Well, it was the end of 2010 to the beginning of 2011 for me. And I was about to go into the studio with my band at the time. And I just remember I was celebrating. I just put out my films and I was celebrating this brand new thing for me, which was passive income. And so I just decided, like, I remember I started, and I wasn't much of a dancer before that, but in my apartment, I would just dance and dance and dance. And I realized I had this free time that I didn't have before. I was able to quit my job and I was getting this passive income, but I was still doing film. And so I would just dance and dance and dance. And then I would have these moments where I would stop involuntarily, slightly involuntary. I could have stopped it if I wanted to, but I would start tremoring and shaking. And something just came over me. And my body, in different parts of my body, would just want to just shake it out. And just this would go on for 10, 15 minutes. And it would then, I was doing this every single day. I was dancing 3 to 5 hours a day, listening to different music. My body was also listening because it would move me. I would dance differently with the different kinds of movement. But there would always be this point where I would just stop and start tremoring, and I would just allow it. I would surrender to it. And then the culmination of this was basically there was this one moment where it just something tipped over. It was like it reached critical mass, and it turned into a very emotional breakthrough for me. And it wasn't connected to like healing past trauma or anything like that. But I remember I cried for hours, and it was beautiful. It was a beautiful cry. I saw my apartment differently. It changed the way that I was even perceiving. I was losing my apartment at the time. We weren't making that much money in the band, but I still quit my job, and I was getting this passive income, and I was just downgrading to a different apartment, and it just completely changed the way that I was perceiving things. And that was because there was the passion in this movement. And before that, I was just making films. I was going to the gym a lot, but then I would just sit in front of a computer. So it was very repetitious types of movement. And I would love to hear, what are some emotional breakthroughs that people that you have worked with, that people have had some kind of a breakthrough where they maybe realized that this had been missing in their life, or maybe it helped them come to a deeper understanding of who they are and how much they appreciate life. Have you had those moments yourself and any of your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember early on in the parkour community, a number of people telling me that like they had suddenly started crying when they were training. And I was very confused by that because I never cried at that point in my life. But there was a point at which I was actually working with one of my personal training students who was trained by Kit Lachlan in stretch therapy. And he was doing a very intense hip flexor stretch on me. And there was a moment when it triggered me and just took me back to having been violently choked when I was 12 years old. I realized later that the sternocleidomastoid and the psoas basically share the same innervation. They're very connected. They tend to contract mutually. I was like, boom, okay, there you go. So that was, and I've noticed that like anytime that I have somebody work on me up until recently, if they touch my sternocleidomastoid, it's just like this huge sense of guarding comes up in my body. So movement certainly can trigger emotion in lots of different ways, and it can be very profound. I had we've had like in parkour, when you're working with parkour, you're working with fear, right? Like that's just the reality of it, is that people are going to feel afraid, and they're going to have to learn to overcome that fear. And so that can then reference back to any fear experience that they've had in the past, and can be a place of catharsis where that is processed and overcome. And it also breaks patterns and allows them to recognize the strength and courage in themselves when that fear pattern shows up again. And so we've had really beautiful experiences with that. Right? There was a woman who came to one of our seminars, and I tell the story a lot, but she was looking at a gap jump, which was very much within her ability, but it was right above a waterfall between two rocks. And we were going down this creek, and I had been behind the group, and I caught up to them. And there were a couple of coaches who were not on our staff, but were experienced parkour coaches who were encouraging her to do the jump. And I kind of stepped in, and I told her that it was actually okay with me if she didn't do the jump. That was very important, was that she had permission to choose what she wanted, but that I trusted completely that she was capable of the jump, and that we would be there to support her if she chose to do it. And she asked me if it was okay if she cried while she did the jump. And I said, that's fine. You do whatever you need. And so she made the jump, and she landed on the other side, and she was crying while she did the jump. Tears were coming out of her eyes. And she was walking away from the jump. She was still crying, but she was laughing while she was crying. Mm-hmm. And so I talked to her about that. It's like, this is your process. This is your emotions as they come out, and whatever you need that allows you to accomplish it is fine, right? She said that kind of that moment then like would ring for her whenever she faced fear in her professional life. for a long period after that. And now, she's come back for, this will be her 5th or 6th year at Return to the Source. And now she's, doing backflips and jumping off the cliffs, and doesn't cry as part of her experience of doing these things, right? That she doesn't need that emotional outlet to access courage. But it was part of her journey in a really powerful way. Then the last one that was really interesting is rough and tumble play in particular can be a really powerful place for people to examine, histories of physical abuse. And that definitely has come up, for both male and female students. And it's something that we've seen people have really powerful epiphanies about the relationship to that, and, feel seen and feel safe and feel a sense of trust that they were really missing in their life, and didn't necessarily even realize what they were missing until they had that opportunity to feel like, okay, I can really push myself and stretch myself with these people, and I can open up emotionally and feel safe about it.
Make sure y'all head over to benjosephstewart.com, become a member. You'll have access to the growing library of deeper dives where I talk about all the stuff that I really can't talk about on YouTube. Make sure you get involved in the Discord chat. That's where a lot of the conversation is happening, talking about new theories, being able to interweave into the greater conversation that is how we awaken infinity. That's our highest potential. And I just want to remind you, you are the most powerful technology ever known to creation. Wield it like an artist with a conscience.